This is My Reality Podcast Show, the podcast that allows you to tell your story with no questions asked. If you think you don't have a story, then think again. Everyone's got a story to tell. How I became an addict to cocaine at 19 years old, and how the so called party drug destroyed one woman's university dreams, relationship, and bank account. In her first year of university, 19-year-old Alice tried cocaine for the first time. Despite its reputation as a party drug, that first line spiraled into a 13-year addiction, costing her relationships, a degree, jobs, and thousands of pounds worth of debt. Now 2 years sober, Alice 34 talks to Cosmopolitan about the realities of being an addict to coke. The first hit. My parents brought me up to believe drugs were awful, and if I touched them, they'd kill me, so I never thought I'd even try them. I was really good at school, I got strong grades, and my studies were important to me. The first time I took cocaine, I was 19 years old. I was in a relationship with someone who did it, and after an hour of him and his friend convincing me it wasn't going to kill me, I tried it. Growing up, I always felt like everyone had the manual to life, and I didn't. I felt empty inside, like something was missing. As soon as I snorted that first line, that hollow feeling went away. Drugs became my solution to life. I was at university, and at the time earning a fashion degree, working 2 part-time jobs, and trying to socialise, all while also suffering from ME, chronic fatigue syndrome. Everyone around me seemed to balance everything with absolute ease. For me, it was hard, but suddenly I could do all those things thanks to both the energy from the coke and my newfound confidence. But it wasn't long until my magical solution backfired horrendously. How the addiction started. I only used cocaine socially at first, like when I went to the pub. It became a very normal thing for me. However, very quickly I wanted to do it much more than my partner did. I wanted to use all the time. Soon I was doing it at home, when I was having a quiet night in. Within 2 years, I was using every single day, all the while still studying for my degree. While the coke started off as my solution, life soon became unimaginable. I couldn't get out of bed because I was on the come down. I wasn't really turning up to lectures. I was much more interested in staying at home and using. I dropped out of uni 3 months after starting my second year. I was in horrendous amount of debt. My student loan had been spent on coke, and I had credit cards ran up to stupid amounts just to fund my habit. My ex-boyfriend had lost his job, so he started dealing, which meant we had it in the house all the time. My relationship started to break down, and we eventually broke up. I got a job in a shop, but that became really difficult as I'd been up all night using and then going into the toilet at work to take more. Wow. What I was like on coke. I was I was an aggregated version of my my reading's terrible, sorry. I was an exaggerated version of myself on coke. I could talk up to 100 miles per hour, and I had confidence I'd never had. I could go and talk to people I would normally be intimidated by. In my head, coke was a very glamorous drug. It was what celebrities did, so it seemed acceptable. That kept me in denial for a long time. It wasn't heroin. I wasn't injecting it. I wasn't that addict, I would tell myself. It seemed to be very social. It seemed to be very socially acceptable. It seemed to be a very socially acceptable drug. Always going back to it. I had bouts throughout the 13 years of my addiction where I was clean, sometimes for up to 2 years, but eventually I would go back to it. I met the man who would become my husband when I was 25. He's never touched a drug in his life. I moved down south with him. I've moved a lot, which I can now see as running away from my addiction. And quite quickly, we got engaged. I had told him about my past, including the debt I accumulated, but I neglected to tell him I was still recreationally using. Sad. I was very adamant I wasn't going to go down the road of drugs in my new life with him. But whenever I went back to my hometown to see family and friends, I ended up using. One weekend I went home and took coke, methadone and some other illegal highs. Everything in white powder form that I could stick up my nose. Wow, so anything in white powder form that I could stick up my nose from the Friday I arrived until the Sunday. It's going hard, boy. I didn't sleep and somehow managed to drive home. I couldn't see or think straight. When I got to the front door, I had to come clean to my fiance about everything. This was 2 months before our wedding. Wow. I was in such a state that I made him drive me to the hospital because I thought I was dying. It was a difficult time. I'd broken his trust, but we worked through it. We got married aged 27 and everything seemed fine. I fell pregnant with my first child. I was clean throughout my pregnancy and we moved back to my hometown where I had my first child at 28. But motherhood did not come naturally to me. Putting a little person before myself was hard. £10,000 spent on coke in 1 year. When we moved back, I found myself a mum of one in a remote area and I felt really lonely. But at this point, I had one friend who still took drugs. Soon enough, I was taking day trips with my baby to spend the day with her when we would use together. That old empty feeling I had as a teenager became very apparent in motherhood. The coke numbed it. That hollowness would go away when I used. Excuse me. I never wanted a second child, but I began to think my eldest should have a sibling. Plus, if I was pregnant, I told myself I wouldn't take any drugs because I didn't in my first pregnancy. I got pregnant, but this time it wasn't enough to keep me clean. I used cocaine the night before my 20-week scan. I remember lying on the ultrasound table and my baby was moving around like crazy in my stomach. I just thought, I've done that to you. Wow. I just thought, I've done that to you. What have I done? I didn't use any more in my pregnancy after that. It terrified me. Now 30 years old, I've gave birth again. I wasn't able to breastfeed my second born, but to be honest, I was relieved because I wanted to do coke. Oh my God. I had postnatal depression, 2 young children and a new renovation project my husband had signed up for. My answer to all of that stress plus my ME was coke. I went back to using on a daily basis and my husband still didn't know. I had set up my own business, which meant I could very easily hide money. My business account paid money into my joint account, but I kept some of it to fund my addiction. Within 1 year, I spent £10,000 on coke. Oh my God. The decision to stop. After that year, I made the decision that I no longer wanted to take coke. I could see what it was doing. My work had become unimaginable. There were too many questions from my husband. My moods were awful and I knew I was out of control. Every morning I'd wake up thinking, how could I get the money and how could I hide it? It was exhausting and I didn't want to do it anymore, but I couldn't stop. I came clean to my husband even though I was terrified. He told me when he told me when could work. He told me when no, he told me, excuse me. My eyes are playing tricks on me. He told me we could work through things and he could take control of my finances. I went for counselling, but talking about coke made me want it, so I'd leave therapy and pick up on my way home. Wow. So the talking about coke basically at the counselling made her want to do coke, made her want to use. So she left the counselling to pick up some coke on her way home. Then the pinnacle moment came. One day I asked family to look after my children and said I was popping out to the shop. I went to my dealer's house, got a load of expensive pure coke, a couple of bottles of wine and used all night at home until 6 the next morning when I had a fit. Oh, my heart was through my chest and I thought I was dying. I wanted to die because I didn't know how to stop my addiction and knew I was hurting everyone around me. Do you see? That's the thing that I just want to pause on that 1 minute and just say, when you're doing anything you're doing has an effect on the people around you and in your life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's 100%. So if you're doing bad things, it's going to have an effect on the people that are in your life, like our husbands, from the coke and whatever, our husband, it had an effect on him because he hasn't never used in his life, as I just always suggest in the beginning. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Despite this health scare and the fact my husband and mother found out as an ambulance was called, 2 days later I was driving around to my drug dealer's house, crying my eyes out again. I used until 2 a.m. when I decided to Google treatment centers, seeking help. I spent one last day with my children and then I admitted myself to a 30-day rehab program. I was absolutely terrified and was, physically shaken on the way. I was completely ready to stop. I couldn't do it to myself or my family anymore. See what I'm saying? If hurting yourself, you're hurting your family, like you're definitely hurting your family because you've got people that love you and care about you. You've got children, you've got a husband, you've got a mother, you've got a father. All these people are getting affected from your habit. It's nuts. This was my last chance. The rehab doctor looked at my nose and told me I had damaged it. It was constantly weeping and I had a permanent cut. Oh, mad. It was a relief to go to the group therapy and have all these people who knew what I was going through. See, this is why you have to seek help, and you got to be strong, you got to be brave. If you got to go to counselling, if you're listening and there's somebody that's going through this, and you got to go to counselling, go. If you have to go to rehab, go. You got to be strong. Because like I said, every action has a reaction. So you got to think about the people that you're hurting around you, and if you don't do it for yourself, do it for them at least, you know what I mean? And that's what I would say on that. Alright, let's wrap this up. I finally realised that I was really sick. I wasn't this horrible, disgusting human being I thought I was. I actually had an illness that needed to be treated. So, right, you see, wake up call, realisation, seeing the light, you get what I'm saying? All these things is just happening to her. She's seeing the light, she's rocking with it, she's going with it, you get me? And that's what you have to do. It's not easy, do you know what I mean? I can sit here and say, oh yeah, that's what you have to do, It's not easy, I know that. Do you know what I mean? If it was easy, then we wouldn't have people that are addicts and that, innit? Because everyone would get clean eventually. Do you know what I mean? When they realise they're never going to get as high as their first hit, they get clean, innit? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. Let's wrap it up again. My husband is a good earner. I had a house, car, my kids were well dressed, everything was picture perfect, but on the inside I was dying. We have a really stereotypical idea of what an addict looks like, but I was a high functioning addict for many years, holding down a job and looking after children. On the outside looking in, there was nothing wrong, but in reality, something was desperately wrong. Eventually, after all my treatment, the urge to use just went. Oh, that's good, man. Serious, you know. So you see, it can happen, man. If it happened for this lady, it can happen for anyone. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'd say. What life is like now. My life today is so different. All the materialistic stuff that used to matter, because it's got a D on it, that used to matter, me, alright, Jesus. Let me start again, I apologise. My life today is so much different. All the materialistic stuff that used to matter to me doesn't now. That was me being really sick and trying to put on a mask so no one could see me. On the inside, I stopped working to spend money. I stopped working to spend more time doing one of the things I feared the most, being a mum. Okay, so she stopped working to basically stay at home and be a stay-at-home mum. Do you know what I mean? Because that's one of the things that she was afraid of. Okay, being a mum, I loved that I can be fully present for my children. Something I never thought I would be able to do or enjoy. Sadly, last year my mum got diagnosed with cancer, but I have helped her through her chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and helped nurse her back to health, rather than be the constant worry I'd been to her for 13 years. Oh, that's nice, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was finally able to step up and be there for her. Life really is so much simpler today. Okay. If you think you have a problem with cocaine or any other mind-altering substance, go and get help. You know what I mean? That's what I would say to you. Do you know what I mean? Yeah? Real talk. Just go and get help, man. You know? So yeah, that's an inspiring story that I picked. You know what I mean? Yesterday night from the internet. You know what I mean? About the paper. And I thought I'd have a go at reading it. Nah, I have to apologise for my reading. It's terrible. Do you know what I mean? I know some of you probably had a little giggle. That's cool. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that's how I'm kind of doing it. Do you get what I mean? Yeah, I'm just going to be picking inspiring stories off the internet or wherever I can get them from and having a go at reading them, man. You know? Because I'd like to think my reading ain't that bad. Yeah, it could be better, but you know, reading more is going to make me better. So, you know, that's what it's all about. Okay? God bless you. Talk to you soon. My Reality Podcast Show is a platform that's set up for normal, everyday people to come on and tell your story. Guests will send us a recording of their story, and the most inspiring story makes it on the show. We'll also contact guests via social media, so look out for that. This is a brand new podcast, KC's My Reality Podcast Show. If there's anyone out there that wants to talk about their reality on this platform, holler at me on all social media sites. Another way to let us know you want to come on the show is to leave a comment on the YouTube page with your social media details down below, and we'll get back to you. That's a problem. Sickness, let them cold turkey all over the Christmas. I'm cooking right now, and I don't need a witness to get holes in my heart like hand washing dishes. Just to feed my baby, selling drugs is on the wish list. Yeah, selling drugs is on my wish